Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. John Owen talks about sports and movies. Thank you for checking out today's video. I always appreciate support, and let's get into it. So I went and saw a early screening of Superman, which I feel like they had a lot of them. But so I saw it last night. This is the next day after that I've seen it, and just wow. This is how you make a superhero movie. I loved it. I'm going to tell you why here in a second, but make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss out on any of the fun. Tell me what you thought about the movie if you haven't seen it yet. I'm going to also issue a spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen it and don't want to be spoiled, either save this video to your watch later and come back once you have seen it, or if you want to be a maniac and be spoiled for it before you go watch it, come along. So without further ado, let's get into it. So just wow, just pure cinema. Just like actually, it was just awesome. I'm getting some specifics here in a minute, but plot, story, character, action, cinematography, music. It was all just fantastic. Just all of it across the board, tens across the board. No notes on any of, no major notes or critiques on any of the aspects of the film. But yeah, let's start with our man Superman. I think what really makes this movie work is the fact that Clark is just so human. And he makes it a very big point of this film that, like, yes, I am an alien, I am from Krypton, I have all of these great powers, but I'm just as human as everyone else because I make mistakes, I try my best. Him and Lex have that whole argument at the end where he's like, I'm just as human as you are, and all that. I think, this is what Superman's supposed to be. I really liked Henry Cavill back in the day, but as I've distanced or as I've like grown up and that film's aged or his character has aged, I just don't really like a broody, kind of dark, cynical Superman. Like I really don't like that type of characterization for this character because that's not what he's supposed to be. If you want dark and broody, you can go watch Batman. Go watch any number of these characters, which is great. That has its space, but I don't want that of my Superman. This interpretation of Superman is unapologetically about preserving life, helping others, serving humanity, doing what he thinks is best for the world. Unapologetically, that doesn't change. Nothing of that wavers. That never wavers. He just does not falter from his morals and his values. And I think that is absolutely amazing. I've heard people say, like, oh, Superman's boring. He's so powerful and he doesn't really have an arc, but I think it is like similar to Steve Rogers, where because they are such Boy Scouts and because they have such strong morals and convictions, it's seeing them persevere through those being challenged, and to where it would be easier and it would be more convenient to kind of, slack on your morals, to solve the problem. But the fact that they're able to persevere um, while never folding on their morals, without ever compromising them. There we go. That's what I was looking for. I think is a really it's just a type of character and a type of movie that really resonates with me. Just to have that endurance and the ability to endure, and persevere. In the face of grave mortal danger. When you have so much on the line. Whenever. In this movie specifically, Superman's trying to stop a war, and he's also trying to save Metropolis, and he's trying to stop Lex Luthor. Right? Like, it's such great, um, just great, just really endearing and resonating to me. And then let's just keep talking about some other characters. I think there is a lot of stars of the show in this, in this film. One concern I had going in was this movie going to be too busy? You've got Soups, you got Lois, you got Lex, you got Mr. Terrific, you got Hawkgirl, you got Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, You've got the big kaiju monster. You've got Ultraman. You've got this Bavarian hammer guy. You've got the engineer. You've got all the Daily Planet people. I was really, really concerned that this movie was going to be like overstuffed. But the fact that like Ultraman was the Bavarian hammer and Ultraman and the engineer are basically just like Lex's muscle, just because like obviously you can't like you have to have some physical opponent, for Superman to go against, whatever the main villain is, Lex Luthor. And they didn't really have like arcs or anything, like that. I think it all they balanced everyone's screen times really good. Everyone got a moment to shine, like a cool moment, without ever taking away from Superman undoubtedly being the main focus. It never felt like he's being regulated, which is what you want, out of a film like this. Anyways, talking about specific characters, let's start with Lex, because I really, really want to talk about him, because dear God, he was diabolical. Just the fact that he is so open and honest about his envy and just his disdain for Superman, I think was just really, really, really cool how they characterized him. He wasn't kind of like awkward and weird like Jesse Eisenberg's Snyderverse Lex Luthor was. Not really a big fan of, honestly, most of the Snyderverse characterizations, but that's not the point of this movie. Or this video. He is diabolically evil. There's no redeeming qualities. You don't empathize or sympathize with him. You're just like, oh, this is a bad guy who his obsession with Superman is just so fascinating to watch and so entertaining to me. Like the fact that he's willing to tear apart Metropolis just to get Superman's attention. The fact that he goes through all of this, everything he does in the movie is to single-handedly kill Superman. Like there's nothing else. When he goes on that scene where he's talking about Galileo and Einstein and how he's like, when I'm being compared to these twats, I think is the word he used. The fact that like the fact that I'm supposed to be one of them, and you're taking my spotlight, and they adore you, and what do you offer the world other than brawn, right? And he just cannot fathom the fact that Superman and Clark is here to do good things and great things. I think it's really, really exceptional the way that James Gunn wrote and characterized Lex. And Nicholas Hoult is just a really, really badass actor. I mean, he's so great. Every time I watch like a movie with him, I'm like, yeah, this guy gets it. This guy knows how to act. And I'd probably say Lex is probably like my favorite role of his, that I've seen. So, and kind of like something new, for him, like this like envious rage guy, like really, 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 really cool, really great, really great. Next I want to talk about Mr. Terrific. Wow, total stand stealer. Everyone he's in, carelessly and easily cool, like just so cool. His T-spheres and just his like bravado and all that, really great. Loved him. Honestly, there's been speculation about like, who's gonna be on the Justice League roster, this Justice League roster and this universe. Honestly, I could see Mr. Terrific sliding in there. I know he's not like what you would consider, an OG Justice League member, but I think he's so, 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 so cool. They put out a couple rumors that a Mr. Terrific, spinoff show is, is James Gunn is considering it. I would be so here for that. I thought he was flawless. I thought he was great. So yeah, loved him, adored him. Lois Lane. Loved Lois. I love how, like she, doesn't just like immediately fawn over Clark, just because he is Superman. When they have their argument in her apartment, she's like, she's like, we're just so different. You trust everyone. I question everything. So I really thought that dynamic was really different. Even though she talked about, she's not sure about dating Clark, whenever the chips were down and it was go time, it was go time. And she stepped up to the plate. Like she was going to go to the camp by herself. Fortunately, Mr. Terrific, accompanied her, but like she was down, she was 10 toes down, she was ready to go. And I think that's just such a testament to the beautiful standing that, any good Superman and Lois Lane should have, and I love that like Clark is like the yearner. I'm like, yes, I love it when men yearn in fiction. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. I love it. I love it. Um yeah, no, I love Lois. I love the performance by, and I can never remember the actress's name. But she crushed it. All the side characters, Jimmy Olsen, Eve, Perry, the sports reporter, Hot Girl, Green Lantern, I thought they were all great. Without taking away too much of the spotlight at all. Engineer was cool. She was fine. She was cool. I don't really have anything. I have no feelings towards her one way or the other. Ultraman was the one character I was like, okay, what are they gonna do with him? Because when I saw it was Ultraman, I was like, oh, is they gonna do some multiverse shit right now? I'm like, I don't want to do multiverse, right? Because like Ultraman, if you don't know, traditionally is a version of Clark Kent or Superman from an alternative reality who's evil. We all know the Superman trope, the evil Superman trope, Homelander, Omni Man, Injustice Superman, like we've seen that so many times. Like, bro, I don't want to do this anymore, But then I was like intrigued by the whole like command control thing, and I was like, okay, I'm interested to see where this worked out. I thought it was an interesting concept, and then the fact that like he's a clone, which is like a very easy setup for them to then do a Superboy, story in the future, like the clone version, not like Clark's son, Jonathan Kent, or whatever, right? Like, the one from the Young Justice is probably the one people are most familiar with. Anyways, Ultraman being a clone, I thought was interesting. I had no real strong opinions on it. I was relieved that it wasn't multiverse. Didn't really have a strong opinion on it being a clone or not. At the end of the day, Ultraman served his purpose as being the person that Superman had to punch, because he could have just punched Lex. Lex is much more in the psychological defamation, obsession, side of the villain, for Superman to deal with. Not really, obviously, the muscle until they inevitably, they give Lex his like big, suit that he does. But nevertheless, I had no real strong opinions on Ultraman and Engineer. They served their purpose. Wouldn't mind seeing them more in the future, but not like dying to see them either. Just neutral on them. They serve their purpose in the plot. All good, all good. And then Metamorpho, of course. So I love Metamorpho. I think the character's super cool. Like other adaptations and iterations I've seen him in, and I really, really, really liked him in this one. Like him having a son and like feeling a lot of remorse for the halal guy that Lex kills, which was a sick scene, by the way. And like immediately being like, dude, like I gotta help Superman, right? I gotta help Kal-El. Really, really, really liked Metamorpho in this. Him showing up with the Justice Gang at the end. Very cool. Really, really liked Metamorpho. Someone I would definitely be willing to see more in the future. I think it will be intriguing to see like what they kind of do. Like, I definitely could see them having like a Justice League A team and a Justice League B team, and like Metamorpho, and maybe who knows else, being on kind of the B team, whether that's like Justice League International or Justice Society. Not that they would probably do Justice Society of America, but like them being like Justice League International, I think would like be really cool, and them kind of like forming that team, I think would be really, 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 really cool. Um, no, but yeah, so I really, really liked all the characters. Have no critiques on any of them. I've seen some discourse about like online about how it was dumb, how Clark told Lois, that um that he loved her, and they had been seeing each other for 3 months. But A, I think it's because he's a yearner, right? And B, he's known Lois for longer than 3 months. Like he's been working at the Daily Planet for 3 years. So he's known Lois for longer than that. So I had no objection to that. I didn't even really think twice about it. Um whenever he told her that. And then whenever she said it back to him. Um but yeah, that was like the one thing I was saying online. I was like, yeah, that's dumb. I completely disagree with that. But anyways, let's see, what should we? Oh, story. Not like a super complex plot by any means. I think I kind of liked how there was no like set thing they have to beat at the end. Right? Like there's no like MacGuffin or like, oh, like this is gonna blow up. Like we've got to stop it. Right? Like I like that. I like that. Like kind of plot just kind of like developed very naturally. Like nothing crazy. Now, what did like really kind of shock me, and I think this plays into Clark's character arc or characterization even more, is the fact that like it never came out that the second half of the message from his parents wasn't faked, or they didn't use AI, or something like that, right? Like the fact that there's like, yeah, like canonically that's what the end of the message says was nuts. That was nuts. And Superman having to deal with the fallout of that, and general distrust, that then the public ensued, after that. I thought was really, really crazy and honestly like very bold for them to be like, yeah, like this is what they sent Clark to do. But because Clark has learned such humanity and has such a good heart, he didn't just default on his Krypton heritage, because that's not who he is. He's not a ruler, he's not a dictator, he's not a killer. And I think that was and I thought that was really cool. I really like that. I really like that. The Pocket Universe, everything that was going on there, really cool. Really liked it. The Photon River when they were fighting Ultraman and and Crypto. Oh, love Crypto. But let me get back on the Photon River first part before I talk about Crypto specifically. Um, Super cool. Thought that was really a really unique concept. That I really don't remember there being in like any other like comic book movie like that. You can say like the Quantum Realm and Ant Man and like the Ant films, which like true, yeah, probably, um, but like serve very different purposes. Like they use the Quantum Realm like time travel and stuff, and that's where Kane comes from, and this is just like Lex's own personal prison, which is nuts and crazy. Um, yeah, that was all really cool. They're seen in the Photon River, and then he blows, and then he uses his icy wind to blow himself like out of the black hole. That was cool. That gave me chills, y'all. I was like, oh my god, that is badass. That is so cool. Right? Like, just like really really cool. Everything down there was really cool. Um, and then crypto, wow, I loved Crypto. I loved how he like didn't listen to Clark, and when he's like it's a foster situation, I thought he was just kind of giving Lois shit. But then it actually was. That's why the dog doesn't listen to him, and we'll get to that part in a second. Here, but yeah, really really loved Crypto. Loved Ma and Pa Kent. And I really liked how they were like elderly. Not like other Superman adaptations. They're not like quite that old, but loved them. The scene where he tells Clark like it's your actions that define you. I've never been proud of you. Never been prouder of you. And all that I thought was so sweet and so well done. And I loved how the fact at the end, whenever he's in the when he's in the Fortress of Solitude, that he then like when the robots are like when Gary, let's use his proper name, um is like, oh, put on the he likes the parents his parental footage. It's suiting him, and it's Ma and Pa Kent. That really struck the heart chords because I think that was another example for murder further cementing his humanity, and like he's like, oh, these are my parents. I come from Krypton, but these are the people who raised me. I love that. I loved all that. Let's see, what else do I? Oh, I loved how Superman in this movie goes out of its way to showcase Clark saving civilians. I think that is a lost art in modern comic book movies. I don't really think like the MCU does like a great job of that. So I think comic book movies post the explosion in the popularity of the MCU, then we're like really kind of ignore that aspect. But like I rewatched all the same Spider-Man trilogy recently, and that Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker routinely goes out his way to save civilians. Even that results in the bad guy getting away. And like stuff like that. And I love that part. I love that aspect. I thought it was really cool whenever the fact that like Eve's selfies were the one to take, were what resulted in them taking down Lex. I thought that was really cool. Definitely thought she was a metahuman at first, though, potentially, and I was trying to figure out like who the hell she could be because Jimmy called her Mutant Toes. That's her contact name, but she just has like discolored feet or something, I guess. But that was just another little quick side note. So really liked Eve. Her and Jimmy, are funny. Really like Jimmy Olsen. What I think would be really cool is if they had like a spin-off, like Office style Daily Planet show where it's just like all the reporters, like, and maybe like Clark's in it, maybe Clark's not, but I think all the other reporters that were really cool and really fun too. So I would love to see something like that. Yeah, the fight with Ultraman, whenever like he like slams into the bus after his arms broke and like throws him into the black hole. Really cool, really cool. I think this movie does a really good job of also showing like Clark's strength. When whenever Krypto destroys the spheres that help Ultraman fight him, and then he just puts Bell to ass. Just absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. Um, yeah, and I think, and I what I really like about this movie, and I've touched on this many already, but Superman was only able to save the day because of his belief in others and his trust in humanity. The fact that because he is so inviting and has such a strong devotion to others that he was able to save the day. He's able to both save Metropolis and stop the war because he sent Hot Girl and Metamorpho and Green Lantern, there. Um, to stop it. And I that could not have been done if he was like an asshole, right? Like I think that's just like another testament to his humanity and all that. Blah 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 blah. I won't beat you to death with that again. Themes and morals. I think this movie coming out whenever it has, I think is really, 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 really great timing. The messages of like, um, just like being kind to others in a time whenever there is a lot of especially in America, whenever bigotry is on the rise, and we've got all the immigration policy right now in this country is in a flux. Transphobia, homophobia, just bigotry in general is just through the roof right now in this country. I don't really care if you're watching this. If that upsets you, it's the truth. And I think just that message of like humanity and for all, freedom and justice for all, not just for some, for all, like, and Superman like doesn't really like, he's not representing America. He doesn't care who he's saving. He just wants to save people and save lives. He doesn't care about geopolitical con you know consequences or whatever that person may be, and the many different factors that you can identify as. He just wants to save lives. He doesn't want anyone to die. He doesn't want anyone to get hurt. And I think that's phenomenal. I think that type of message I think really could be really resonating to a lot of people. In these current times. He goes after. I think this movie's got a lot of real world parallels that are probably going to go over a lot of people's heads. I think Lex Luthor is very reminiscent of another whack ass billionaire tech guy that we have, right now in our current world. Bulgaria, and I cannot pronounce the other place for the last name, for the name of my life. But I was like, oh, this is very clearly a lot of parallels to Israel and Palestine. This movie does not shy away on where it stands on that issue, and I thought that was that's really brave, in this current climate, especially as like supporting Israel is like a very bipartisan issue, at least in the context of America, right? Like both parties, continue to show their support for Israel. Um, and this movie has a stance that I was not really expecting it to have, to say the least, on that issue. If you read in between the lines at all. So yeah, I thought the themes and the messaging of this was really powerful and very poignant, for and you know, pertinent, for today's current kind of world political climate, and I really, really love that it was so unabashedly in your face about it. It's not subtle at all. Where this movie stands on things like immigration, uh, you know, conflict in the Middle East. If you read in between the lines at all, this movie has a very clear stance on those two things, and I think considering what's going on in the world, I really love that, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, just overall, I adored everything about this movie. I have no notes. I thought all the characters were great, story was good, action was great, cinematography was great, um, themes and morals wonderful. I really think this is gonna be the best movie this year, probably. I love Sinners, of course. I was obsessed with Sinners. I'm gonna be obsessed with this movie. I think Fantastic Four is gonna be great, but for me personally, I'm having a hard time envisioning something that hasn't come out already. That's gonna beat this movie for me. But today's rating, I'm gonna give it an infinity out of 10. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Pete. Thank you for checking out today's video. I always appreciate support. I know that was a long one, so I appreciate if you've made it to the end. Make sure you guys check out the link content above and down below in the description, and have a great day. Thanks.